Hey guys, welcome to Code Decode. Today in this video, we will be covering some very frequently asked interview questions on Auth2, OIDC and Okta. So let's get started. Please like, share and subscribe to support us so that this video reaches to more of the audience like you. What is OAuth? OAuth is an open standard or a protocol for authorization. So when it comes to security, there are two main things: authentication and authorization. Let me give you an example. When you go to a building, you meet a security checkpoint. The watchman asks you for your identity, who you are, and then it asks you where do you want to go, in which flat number or which block number. That's what access do you need. So that's authorization. So authentication says who you are you a legit person, and authorization, what do you want to access and are you allowed to access that or not. So that guy calls that particular flat and asks whether this guy standing beneath is trying to access your flat. Is he allowed to do that? So that's authorization. Auth2 is not at all about authentication. It's only about authorization. It tells you what you can access in an application. Now I'll give you one simple example where Auth2 works like a charm. So when you try to sign into Twitter, it gives you an option to either create your own phone number, email ID or login, or you can also sign in with Google or Apple. Now what Twitter says is, okay, you are already identified person and you're already authenticated with Google. So I do not want to do authentication anymore. I just want some of your data. So I want some authorization. I want your name, your email address and profile picture for authorization and for my database. So it asks you to provide your basic information that is stored with Google when you try to sign in with Google. So what OAuth do is, it delegates the responsibility of authentication to Google, saying if you identify it as authenticated, I consider this guy as authenticated. I just need some accesses. Now, before asking for accesses, it asks you, can I get your name, email address, profile picture from Google and use it for myself as a Twitter account? Then you will say yes or not. So these accessing name, email address and profiles are called a scope. Like what you want to access, that is a scope. So that's what Auth2 does for you. It is an authorization framework. It delegates the user authentication to service that hosts the user account. So here Google is the service that hosts our account. And the third party application called Twitter is allowed to access that Google account's information, and authentication is done by the Google only. And authorization, it will ask your permission to access your particular scoped things. So Auth2 provides authorization flow and not the authentication one. Authentication is already done when you sign in with Google. Hey guys, there's a super amazing app called as Next Level, recently launched by Unacademy for you. Next Level is an ultimate platform for you to showcase your expertise and skills and get professional ratings. The better is the professional rating, the better is your job opportunities. Yes, this is the application where you will have job opportunities out there for you, waiting for you. There are many coding competitions on the application. All you need to do is participate in these coding competitions, compete with the people, win the coding rounds. The more you win, the better is your rating. The better is your rating, the more is the job opportunities unlocked for you. Yes, they have multiple partners across the multiple domains, like in IT services like HCL, TCS, Infosys, SAP Labs, in e-learning platform also like Scalar, Simplilearn, in finance department like ICICI, in e-commerce department like Cashify and many more. You can invite your friends and challenge them to coding competitions. The best part is the app is completely free and the link to download the same is given in the description below with the code reference. Right now you will need to join the waitlist. You can start playing on the app as soon as your waitlist is confirmed. So hurry, download the app, join the waitlist to get the early access to the app. Also do not forget to refer to your friends so that you can get ahead in the waitlist. Now there are two versions of Auth available in the market, Auth1 and Auth2. Auth1 is completely deprecated. These are two complete different things and they are not even backward compatible. Now what is widely used in the market is in the form of Auth2 for authorization purpose. So wherever you see such kinds of delegation of authentication to another kind of application, that's Auth working upon. So how it works internally. So this was the Twitter. Through browser, what it does is it is asking you to grant you some authorization. When you say, okay, you click on this sign in with Google, what you do is you do the authorization grant. So this Twitter takes this authorization grant to authorization server. Here in our case, it can be Okta, Auth2 or any such organization who can become an authorization server for you, or you can also implement it locally for yourself. And this authorization server gives you the access token. And this access token, Twitter will take and give to your resource server. Here in our case, it will be Google. And says, I have a permission from the user that I can get the basic information like name, email address, and profile picture from you that you have stored. So this is the access token, give me that. And Google will say, okay, now since the user only clicked on sign in with Google and user only clicked confirm, that is why you already have the grant, you already have the access token, take your data that you want. So that's how Auth2 works internally. But are we able to relate it with our application? No, we cannot. So this is something which is highly widely available almost everywhere in the market. But when it comes to us, the Java backend developers or the full stack developers, how are we able to relate with Auth2? So consider this as an Angular application. So this is our Angular application. It is working in localhost 4200. And this is the backend APIs that you have created with Spring Boot application and Eclipse or IntelliJ. And that is working and up and running at localhost 8080 and some path. Now these are secured. You have made this Spring secured. And you have said without access token, you cannot access this protected data. Those data are actually internally stored in the database. So if you want Angular application, you want to access some data in database, first go and get the access token from the authorization server. So in our case, this whole logic goes away. This authorization grant is also done by authorization server or Okta in our example here. So what Okta does is, Okta has two basic endpoints. So let's first understand what is Okta. Okta is a one-stop solution for authentication and authorization in security world for we developers. This Okta is actually an organization. This organization has created loads of endpoints and logic to maintain your authentication in a database and your authorization also by providing the access tokens, refresh tokens, etc. All what you need to do is not to implement anything locally, just to make your life easy. Okta says configure your application to Okta, then hit these endpoints and fetch your authentication authorization things. So Okta not only provides authorization and access tokens, refresh tokens, but also provides authentication and ID tokens in the form of OIDC. If it doesn't seem familiar to you at the straight point, that is okay, that is completely fine. But just remember this thing, that whenever somebody says you Okta, do not say that is your authorization protocol. It is not. Okta internally does authentication and authorization for you. It is an organization who makes your life easy, who does authentication and authorization on your behalf for you. That's what is Okta. So what Okta does is, Okta has some set of endpoints created for you. So you configure your application in Okta. It gives you some client ID, secrets, tokens, keys, many such things that you configure in your application. Then you hit these endpoints. The two basic endpoints that it has is Auth2/authorize, which gives you the grant. Here you need authorization grant, right? So authorization server Okta only gives you the grant, and using that grant, you can again hit another endpoint, that is Auth2 token, to get the access token. That's how authorization server internally works for you. So let's see the actors of Auth 2.0. The main actors of Auth 2.0 are a resource owner, that is we. We are the one who configures our application to Okta. So we are the one who is going to grant a permission to any Angular or any other kind of microservice to access our backend APIs. So we are the one who configures any application. Who is the resource server? Our backend APIs are the resource server. So internally, the resources are kept on databases, and the one who supplies this data from database to your request is the resource server, that is your backend application. Currently, it will be working on localhost 8080 for you. So any resource server is the backend API for you. Who is the client? In our case, it can be an Angular application who wants to access data from your database. So that's the client. Even Angular application, even though you have created it, since it is not on the same origin, it will require an access token to hit you. So here authorization server, what it will do is, our Angular app will hit the authorization server, asks for the grant, It gives you the grant. You again hit the authorization server. You get the access token. You hit the API using the access token as a bearer token in the header, and you get your protected data. And that's how only in this block your logic gets finished. Your grant and access token task is done by authorization server. And that's how your Angular app gets the access token as well as grant from the authorization server Okta itself. So what is authorization server? It's basically a main engine for OAuth. So Okta and Auth0 are the two examples of such organizations who acts as an authorization server for you. But can you see clearly Okta basically is a one-stop solution or is an organization who acts as an Auth2 authorization server and also a provider for OpenID Connect. Now, OpenID Connect is a way for authentication also. It provides you the ID token, which gives all the information about the user. So that's Okta for you, a one-stop solution. Also remember one important thing, Okta internally uses OAuth2 only. This is the Okta server, authorization server. It internally uses OAuth2 under the hood for your authorization purpose. And how OAuth2 works internally? It works using the access tokens. So Okta gives you access tokens which are internally being used by OAuth2 for authorization purpose. Also, we have terminologies, that is scope, that I've already told you. These were the scope. It needs the authorization to access or read access your name, email, and profile picture. That's the scope. You have access tokens. You have grants and flows. Let's understand each of these in a quick easy example. So what are scopes and tokens? When I say scopes and tokens, these are used in Auth to implement the access control. Anyways, Auth is authorization. So what are you authorized to access is defined by scopes and token. Now together scope and token can be said as permission to do something, where token is the permission with which you can enter into an application, and do something is what you can do into the system. That's the scope. Now I'll give you an example. You go to watch a movie. Now on the movie ticket, you have the scope also. You have the scope saying what is the movie name and what is the time when you are entering to watch the movie. So these are the two scopes, the name and the expiry time. The name of the movie says which movie you are authorized to watch, between which time is it valid to. The movie ticket itself is the token. If you do not have a movie ticket, you will not have an access to the movie. That is access token for you. And on the access token, you have the scope defined. So similarly, you have access token have the scope defined. There are 4 types of scope: read access, write access, read and write access, and no access. Similar to a movie ticket, you have the name of the movie which you are allowed to access and the time when you are allowed to access. And those two informations are the scope which is defined on the access token itself, like on the movie ticket itself. So we understood scope and tokens. We need to understand grants. That is also very simple. The application grant types or flows, they both are the same thing, are the ways through which application gains access token from the authorization server. Now I'll give you an example of movie ticket again. How can you book a movie ticket? How can you get an access token? There are 2 ways to get an access token or a movie ticket. That is to walk in into the theater and purchase from window, or to book online. So these are the 2 ways to access your movie ticket. Similarly are the grants. The way you choose is the way how you obtain your access token. There are multiple ways in Auth2 to gain your access to access token. First is a client credential. Remember, this is the widely used with V backend developers or the front end developers, or maximum with the front end like single page applications. We can use authorization code or authorization code with PCKE extension. So what is the client credential grant? It is used mostly in a non-interactive applications like microservices, batch processes, etc. It is used in conjunction with the client ID and secret. Now what are client ID and secret? So whenever you configure your application on Okta or any authorization server, the authorization server gives you an ID to identify you and secret as a client secret to be kept with you. It also have the client secret and ID to identify you, and you also have the client ID secret actually configured in your properties file. So what you do is you create your application. When you want to have the security implemented in an application, you go and configure your application in Okta server Okta server says, okay, this is your new application. This is your new application ID and secret. Keep it safe with you. Otherwise, I will not give you your access tokens and keys. So what you do is you take those client ID secret, you keep it in your application properties and keep it safe there. And that's where client credential is used. So you give this ID token and the secret to Okta, and Okta gives you the access tokens. So that's how you get access to your access tokens from Okta. Next is authorization code. This flow is usually used in single page applications like Angular applications. Now what happens is the client secret cannot be stored securely. Why? Because we understand that these single page applications are usually deployed on browsers. And anybody can actually get access to what all secrets you have. And can maliciously alter your access token and can give a call to resource servers. So only client ID is given to you, and with just client ID, the Okta will give you your access token. So that's authorization code, but it seems it is not very secured, right? Even client ID is exposed because it is deployed completely on browsers. So there comes authorization code grant with PKCE extension. This authorization flow is similar to the authorization code grant only, but some additional steps to make it more secured for mobile or single page applications. These two you will use when you are using the Angular applications or single page applications. And this you will use when you are just a backend developer and you have a place to keep this client ID and secret safe with yourself. So this is how you get an access to access token. Now these three are rarely used grants to get your access token. Implicit grant is a very simplified flow where you get the access token directly from the client. Then you have resource owner client credential grant type. Now this is used in a very limited applications. This grant requires client to acquire the resource owner's credential. So it is asking you that give me your user ID password. I will go and give it to authorization server. Who will give the third party your ID password? Nobody will. Hence, only and only when you are completely trusting the client, then only you will use such kind of grant types. So this is also rarely used because you will not give your ID password to clients at all, which they can pass to authorization server to get the access token. Now, device code, this is again very rarely used. It is used for internet connected devices who have no browsers. So there are rarely any devices who have not browser access or a terrible keyboard experience. If such cases are there, then you can use a device code to get the access token from authorization server. So these were the 6 ways to get access to your access token from authorization server. Now a very important question and very basic one. Authorization server gives you an access token which has information about what all you can access on the backend API. Here for example, the access token will contain that Twitter requires read access to your name, email address and profile. If this is that simple, why to use tokens in the first place? Why cannot such authorization servers just send the information as a plain JSON object? Why do we need to convert it to access token as a token and then send it to client? Just send the plain JSON, no encoding, no decoding. The answer is for the security purpose. There can be a malicious person in between who can tamper your request and can access anything and get your data out of your database and can access it. So to prevent any such malicious attacks and say that this is an authenticated legitimate user who want to access the backend API and has a legitimate access token, for the security reason, access tokens are used. If you're just sending it as a plain JSON, a malicious user can change the user ID or can access anything that is not to be accessed on the backend APIs. So due to security reason, auth server needs to transmit this information that can be verified by the client application whether this token is a valid access token. So access token was a piece of data to authorize you the access. That's why access token is used. Now Auth2 doesn't define any specific format for access token, but the widely used accepted format for access token is JWT format. That is JSON Web Token format. So what is JWT? A very important question. What is JWT actually? So JWT is not an access token. If you're saying that, you are wrong. JWT is just a format. It is an open industry standard format to share information between two entities like your Angular application and backend application. It is not an access token. It's just a format. Access token can use this JWT format to send their data Each JWT is a signed cryptographic hashing to ensure that JSON content cannot be altered by malicious party. So why JWT is actually used across every platform for access token? Because it is signed using some hashing algorithm, and which makes sure that the third party or a malicious person cannot alter such tokens. For the security reason, access tokens are used in a specific format called JWT. JWT helps the user to send the data in the token itself in the form of claims that we will be seeing later part of this video, and also have a way to set an expiration date on the token. Because if token lives for long, it can be misused. Hence, most of the access tokens comes with an expiration date. Now let's see what is JWT token. So you might have seen this JWT.io. If you can see here also, this is crafted by Oauth2 and Okta. Basically now the Oauth2 and Okta are a common form now. So if you can see, this is a JSON web token. If you can see, this is a red font characters, this is pink fonted, and this is blue fonted characters. So this is in the format of x.y.z, where x is the header. This is the header, y is the payload, this is the payload, and z is the signature, this is the signature. Now let me make you understand about each of these. So a JWT token usually consists of a header, which consists of two parts: an algorithm, like for example HS256 is used for encoding, and a type of token, that is JWT token. So this is a JWT token. So X has two parts: signing algorithm, that is HS256 here, and a type of token, mostly the JWT token. Then it has a payload data. This data contains the claims. So if you can see the key value pair, these are the claims. So this claim is nothing but an information about the user itself. So for example, the name of this user is John. So that's the payload. And what is the signature? So this is the beauty of this JWT token. The signature is actually a base 64 encoding of header plus base 64 encoding of payload plus a secret key. This secret is something which is common between Okta and your application. So remember when I said that when you register your new application, Okta gives you some secrets to keep it with you. So this secret is used here to create your signature. And when all these three are added, then SHA-256 algorithm is applied on this, encoded completely, and that becomes the Z part of this JWT token. So together these three creates the JWT token in the format of header, payload, and signature. And signature makes sure that because nobody has the secret apart from you and the Okta, nobody has the secret, so nobody can have the exact signature. So that's how you can make sure your signature is unique. So you encode base 64 encode this header data and you get the X part. Then you encode base 64 encoding you do for this payload and you get the Y part. Then you put this encoded format of header plus encoded format of payload plus your secret, and after the whole things are concatenated, you actually encode it, and that's when you get your signature. That is the Z part. Now remember one more thing. What is this payload consisting of? This payload consists of claims. What are claims? Claims are the key and the value pair. So what are claims in JWT token? Remember, this is very frequently asked questions in interviews. Where can you send your data in JWT tokens? So this is the payload or the body where you can send your data, and this has information about the user. Claim is the key value pair. In the above example, the key is name, value is John. The claims are the metadata which tells you something about the user. So there are three types of claims: reserved claims, public claims, and private claims. Reserved claims are the set of predefined claims which are not actually mandatory but recommended. For example, issuer, expiration time, subject, and audience. But remember, if you want to use the JWT token as a bearer access token in your application, you have to have all these four: issuer, expiration time, subject, and audience in your JWT token to make it a valid JWT token. So reserved claims becomes mandatory when you are using the JWT token as a bearer access token. The claim does not have expiration time, so this JWT token does not satisfy to be used as a bearer token, bearer access token in our application. They are public claims which are not defined by RFC but are actually defined in public registry of JWT claims. You can use them also. These are also some predefined ones. And the best part is private claims. So these are the custom claims that you can use. Now, for example, I want to send a shop ID or the user ID. Just focus on this signature part and this token. You will see whenever I change something in payload, the signature and everything also changes. Add a user ID as 1. You can see a big change in this signature part and also in this token. You change the payload, your signature will change, everything will change, the token will change. So you can also put anything, any additional metadata that you want to send from an authorization server to the resource server. So this is how you can edit. If I remove it, again, just have a look at this, mainly the signature part. If the payload changes, even the signature changes. So you can just have a look at this 5T and 7A. You can see the difference in the signature part also because you have changed the payload. So from here also you can create your own JWT token using the JWT.io website. Now your Angular application has called an endpoint on authorization server and got the grant. When it got the grant, it gave the grant to again authorization server, hit an endpoint to get an access token like this here and got the access token. Once it got the access token, it hits the backend API. Now the access token is with API. So authorization server has done its task. It has given an encoded format of JWT token to Angular application to access your API. Now it is a task of your backend API to validate this token, whether this token is coming from the valid user and a valid authorization server or a malicious user has changed something in this access token. So to verify how does backend API validates this access token, so there are a few ways to do that. The backend API fetches the header. So here you can see it fetches the header from EY to J9 and decodes it. After decoding with base64 decoder, it gets something like algorithm and type. After base64 decoding, if the type not JWT, then this token will be rejected. So the type should be JWT and a valid algorithm should be used in the token. Then it is a valid one. And then it goes for the second check. Now the second part, it fetches the secret key. Most of the time, secret key either will be stored with you locally or it will be taken from the Okta endpoint. Now using that secret key, you can run decoding of both the payload and the signature. After decoding the body, if the body is something different, then a different signature will be created. And this different signature, using the header and the body, using the secret key, it will generate a different signature. And if both the signatures are different, a JWT token will be rejected. Next, also after base64 decoding of the body, it also has the expiration time. Now, if the expiry is of older time than the current time, then it is already an expired JWT token and application will reject that JWT token. So this is how, while doing all such kinds of steps, you can make sure that JWT is coming only from the valid one if all the checks above are passed. Now I have many interview questions left with OIDC and Okta. I was not able to touch OIDC much. If you want to know more about OIDC and Okta and the coding implementation of Oauth2 with Okta in Spring Boot application, you have to let me know in the comment section. Then only I'll create a Spring Boot demo for Okta integration in our application. That's all for today, guys. Thank you.